It's 1991. And this wildly underfunded middle school chess team from Harlem kids who were literally practicing with borrowed boards in public parks walks into a hotel ballroom outside Detroit.
Right.
And they're there to face off against the most elite private school in New York.
Dalton. Yeah, they were a total powerhouse. I mean, we're talking about a school that had the chess equivalent of an Olympic training center.
Wow.
Like every single kindergartner took chess as part of the normal curriculum. They had actual grandmaster coaches on staff.
Okay, so total elite prodigies.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have the Raging Rooks.
Right, the Harlem team.
Yeah, these were 8th and 9th graders from a really dramatically underfunded public school, a neighborhood plagued by crime. And I mean, some of these kids didn't even learn how the pieces moved until the 6th grade.
Which is incredibly late in the chess world.
Exactly. One of the kids actually practiced in a local park with a neighborhood drug dealer just to, get games in.
That's wild.
It is. So if you look at their starting points, the gap is just unimaginably wide. But here's the spoiler. The Raging Rooks ended up tying Dalton for the national championship.
Which completely, shatters this narrative that we all tend to buy into.
Right. And that is exactly our mission for today's Deep Dives. You listening right now have probably felt the weight of this narrative yourself. Because our society is just completely obsessed with the starting line.
We really are.
We idolize the child prodigy playing Mozart at age 4, or that natural-born athlete who just has this raw, unteachable talent.
Yeah, it creates this really persistent myth that true potential is essentially a genetic lottery. Like, you either have the gift or you just don't.
Exactly. But today, we're pulling from a really rich stack of sources centered largely around Adam Grant's fascinating book, Hidden Potential: The Science of Achieving Greater Things.
Yeah.
And we are going to completely dismantle that prodigy myth.
I love it.
We're going to explore these, counterintuitive character skills and the hidden systems that actually allow anyone to travel extraordinary distances from wherever they start.
And we should probably clarify right out of the gate here. We are not just talking about working harder.
Oh, right. Thank goodness.
Yeah, we aren't peddling that toxic hustle culture advice where you just grind yourself into dust and sleep like 3 hours a night.
No one wants that.
Right. Instead, we're looking at the exact, biological and psychological science of getting better at getting better.
Okay, so let's go back to that Harlem chess team. How does a team with a 5-year late start beat actual prodigies?
Well, their coach, a young Jamaican immigrant named Maurice Ashley, he didn't go out and recruit natural-born chess geniuses.
He didn't.
No, he actively selected for character skills. He looked for discipline, for proactivity, and for kids who could basically regulate their emotions under intense stress. And his teaching method was totally backwards. I mean, instead of starting with basic opening moves like everyone else, he used reversed learning.
Reversed learning. Okay, so what does that actually mean?
He would set up the board with just a few pieces in a late game scenario, and he'd teach them how to checkmate first.
Wait, reverse learning sounds sort of like a gimmick, right? Like, if I don't even know how a knight moves, how does putting me in a checkmate scenario teach me how to play chess?
Right, I get that. But think about it. Learning basic rules in a complete vacuum is incredibly boring.
True.
If you start by memorizing endless opening series, the game just feels like a chore. But if you teach a kid how to win, like how to physically corner the opponent's king, you remove all that abstraction.
Oh, I see. You give them a taste of the victory first.
Exactly. That builds this immediate, intense motivation. And once these kids had the will, they found the way. They started, holding each other accountable, studying old matches in their free time, driving their own growth. Maurice Ashley essentially engineered their motivation by starting at the finish line.
So the secret weapon wasn't raw IQ at all. It was character.
Yeah.
And the sources back this up with this really fascinating piece of economic data. Raj Chetty's famous Tennessee kindergarten study.
Oh, this study is mind-blowing.
It really is. So he tracked over 11,000 students and found that having a highly experienced kindergarten teacher boosted a single classroom's lifetime earnings by about $320,000.
Over $300,000. Just from kindergarten.
Right. Now, the intuitive leap most people make there is to assume, oh, those teachers must have been just incredible at teaching early math and reading.
Right. Like they gave them a cognitive head start.
Exactly. But the data showed something completely different. Those cognitive advantages, the higher math and reading scores, they actually faded after a few years. The kids totally leveled out academically.
Wait, then where does that $320,000 come from?
So the real variable that predicted their higher adult income was that those specific teachers instilled 4 vital character skills: being proactive, pro-social, disciplined, and determined.
Wow.
Yeah, those specific behaviors stayed with the kids for decades. It translated into better job performance, better relationships, and just, higher resilience as adults.
That's incredible, because we always judge potential by starting points. But judging someone's potential by their initial aptitude is it's like judging a marathon runner's final time by watching their first 3 steps.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. The achievement isn't in where you stand at the start. The achievement is in the growing.
Because character isn't a personality trait you're simply born with.
Exactly. It's a learned skill. It's essentially your capacity to prioritize your long-term values over your short-term instincts.
But, realizing character is a skill actually creates a new problem for a lot of us.
How so?
Well, if we weren't born with these traits, the first thing we have to do is learn them as adults, which means fighting against our brain's natural biological desire to just stay comfortable.
Oh, right. The comfort zone.
Let's look at polyglots. The sources feature people like Sarah Maria Hasbun and Benny Lewis. These are people who speak half a dozen languages each, and they pick up new ones in a matter of months.
And what's crazy is neither of them thought they had the quote-unquote language gene.
Really?
Yeah, Benny failed high school Irish and German. Sarah Maria struggled terribly with high school Spanish. They basically assumed they had missed that critical childhood window for language acquisition.
So how did they do it? They clearly succeeded.
They succeeded because they learned to bypass a massive trap that catches almost everyone. And this actually challenges a core belief a lot of us hold about how we process information.
Okay, I'm listening.
There is a statistic in the text that 89% of teachers around the world believe in tailoring instruction to a student's learning style.
Right. The idea that you are a visual learner or an auditory learner or maybe a kinesthetic learner.
Let's slow down here. Are you ready for this? That concept, the idea of tailoring to a learning style, is a total myth.
Wait, hang on. Are you saying visual learner is a total myth? Because I've literally told people my whole life that I'm a visual learner. Like, I vastly prefer to see a chart rather than listen to a lecture.
I know everyone says that, but it is a total myth. Comprehensive scientific reviews of decades of research show there is zero credible evidence that you learn better when the material matches your preferred style.
Seriously? Zero evidence?
Zero. In fact, catering to your comfort zone actually deprives your brain of the opportunity to grow.
Okay, the sources actually cite a study about this, comparing reading versus listening.
Yes, the science article study.
Right. So students were given a complex science article. The ones who read it scored 81% on a comprehension test, but the ones who listened to the exact same information scored only 59%.
And why is that? Because reading forces you to slow down. It introduces friction.
Friction, okay.
You have to actively process logical, analytical chunks of information in a way that passive listening simply doesn't require. That friction you feel, that is the biological sensation of your brain rewiring itself.
Wow. Think about Steve Martin.
Oh, the comedian.
Yeah. Early in his career, his stand-up act was just completely bombing. He would routinely go 20 minutes on stage without getting a single laugh.
Brutal.
Right. And he kept trying to improve by watching and listening to other comedians, basically staying firmly inside his comfort zone. But to actually get better, he had to embrace the one thing he absolutely hated, which was writing.
Right.
Let me make sure I get his exact quote from the text here. He said, "Some people have a way with words and other people, not have a way."
That's hilarious. But it's true. Writing forced Steve Martin to strip away all the rambling delivery and confront the bare bones of his joke structure.
You had to look at the actual jokes.
Exactly. He hated the process, but that specific discomfort was the vehicle for his eventual mastery.
And if you want to accelerate that mastery, you can't just tolerate the discomfort. You actually have to amplify it.
Yes.
The text uses the example of pilot stall training. Have you heard about this?
A little bit, yeah.
So when pilots learn how to recover from a plane literally falling out of the sky, they don't use systematic desensitization.
Meaning they don't just sit in a safe simulator and gently practice the controls.
Right. They don't do that. They use flooding. The instructor physically stalls a real plane midair.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. You have to experience the pure, visceral terror of the nosedive to internalize how to fix it in real life.
Which, bringing it back to languages, is the exact mechanism Benny Lewis used to finally conquer all those foreign languages.
Flooding mechanism.
Yeah. He stopped sitting alone in his room trying to perfectly memorize grammar rules. He started doing what he calls social skydiving.
Social skydiving.
His daily goal was to make 200 mistakes speaking to native speakers every single day.
There was a great anecdote in the sources about this. Some guy tries to order fresh orange juice in Spanish, right? But he completely messes up the vocabulary and confidently asks the waiter for newspaper fruit. Fruto de periódico?
Oh my gosh. See, but that's the point. The goal isn't to look smart or competent. The goal is to maximize the awkwardness.
Right.
There was an improv comedy study mentioned in the text. Researchers found that the participants who persisted the longest and took the most creative risks were not the ones instructed to simply learn.
Really?
Yeah, they were the ones who were explicitly instructed, quote, "Your goal is to feel awkward and uncomfortable."
So think about your own life for a second. Listening to this. What if the feeling of discomfort isn't a warning sign to stop?
Exactly.
What if you don't get comfortable before you practice, but rather comfort is simply the byproduct of practicing?
That framing completely changes how you approach any new skill.
It really does. But here is the next logical hurdle.
Okay.
You're out there, you're embracing the discomfort, you're making your 200 mistakes a day, ordering newspaper fruit.
Right.
How do you ensure you are actually learning from those mistakes rather than just blindly reinforcing bad habits?
Well, you have to become a literal sponge. Yeah. Look at the biology of an actual sea sponge. It is an animal that survived a mass extinction event 500 million years ago.
Wow.
And it didn't survive by evolving sharp teeth or an impenetrable shell or anything like that. It survived through absorptive capacity.
Absorptive capacity.
Right. It actively draws in massive amounts of water, it absorbs the necessary nutrients, and it simultaneously filters out all the toxins.
Okay, that biological mechanism maps really beautifully onto human history, actually.
Oh, the Protestant Reformation study.
Yes. The sources highlight this fascinating economic study because we constantly hear about the Protestant work ethic, this idea that Protestant countries developed higher GDPs because Martin Luther basically convinced everyone that grinding hard and sweating more was a moral virtue.
Right, just work harder and you'll prosper.
But economists actually mapped the distance of various counties from Wittenberg, Germany, which was the epicenter of the Reformation.
And what did the data show?
It revealed that the higher GDP wasn't driven by people simply working harder. It was driven by literacy.
Wow. Because Martin Luther demanded that everyone read the Bible for themselves.
Precisely. To read the Bible, local schools had to start teaching reading. And once the population became literate, they could absorb incredible amounts of information on farming, trade, engineering.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The economic progress came from working smarter, literally absorbing knowledge like a sponge, not just breaking their backs in the fields.
So the text actually outlines this as an absorptive capacity matrix. It details how different people handle new information or criticism.
Let's break that down.
Imagine you get some harsh feedback at work. If you are highly reactive and driven by your ego, you act like Teflon. Nothing sticks. You just deflect the criticism and protect your pride.
We all know a Teflon person.
Oh, absolutely. Then you have people who are reactive, but they are growth-oriented. They are like clay.
Clay. Okay.
Yeah, they are coachable and they genuinely want to improve, but they are entirely passive. They just sit there waiting for a mentor or a boss to mold them. And if that mentor leaves, their growth just stops.
But the ultimate state is the sponge.
Exactly. You are proactive and growth-oriented. You actively seek out the friction and adapt.
Julius Yego is the perfect embodiment of this.
The javelin thrower.
Yes. He's this 5'9" guy from Kenya who just decided he wanted to throw the javelin. He didn't have the massive physical size of a typical Olympic thrower. He didn't have elite training facilities. He didn't even have a coach.
Which is wild for an Olympic-level athlete.
It is. And his biggest rival was an Egyptian athlete, built like Goliath, who was training with elite coaches over in Finland.
See, but the rival was Clay. When the rival's funding ran out and he lost his coaches, he literally stopped training.
Wow.
But Julius Yego was a sponge. He went to a local cyber cafe, watched YouTube videos of Olympic throwers, and just completely taught himself the biomechanics of the throw.
He even developed this highly unconventional release. He would fall face first into the dirt, look almost like he was doing the worm dance move, just to maximize his forward momentum.
That's so creative.
And it worked. He threw the javelin 92.72 meters, beating the Goliath and becoming the world champion.
Because he absorbed the right information and proactively adapted it to his own physical limitations. But, being a sponge also requires that second step,
which is
filtering out the toxins. You have to know what advice to ignore.
Oh, this is critical.
Right. The text shares a story about Melody Hobson. She's now the co-CEO of a massive investment firm. But early in her career, she was mentored by Bill Bradley, the former NBA star and U.S. Senator.
Okay.
And he gave her some brutal feedback. He told her she was a ball hog in meetings, basically completely dominating the room and not letting anyone else speak.
Ouch. That kind of criticism really stings.
It does. The natural human reaction is to become Teflon, right?
Yeah.
To get defensive and say, I'm just being assertive.
Yeah, totally.
The author of the book, Adam Grant, actually shares a similar story. Early in his teaching career, he received feedback that his nervous, heavy breathing into the microphone made him sound like Darth Vader. Yeah. But Hobson realized she needed to filter the criticism properly. She didn't shut down, but she also didn't just passively accept it and stop speaking entirely. She recognized it as a quality control issue from a highly reliable source.
Which highlights a game-changing distinction in the text. Don't ask for feedback, ask for advice.
Yes. The framing there is profoundly different.
It really is. Asking for feedback is sort of like looking in the rearview mirror at what you did wrong. It naturally makes people defensive.
Right.
But asking for advice, that is turning on the headlights to see what you can do right the next time.
And to filter that advice effectively, you run it through a 3-part test.
Care, credibility, and familiarity.
Exactly. Does this person actually care about my personal growth? Do they have credible, proven expertise in the specific area? And are they familiar enough with my unique situation to offer nuanced advice?
So if Bill Bradley calls you a ball hog, he hits all 3 metrics.
Yep, so you absorb it.
Okay, so you are embracing the discomfort. You are proactively absorbing advice like a sponge.
Doing great so far.
Right. But it is incredibly tempting at this stage to fall into a dangerous trap, which is trying to implement every single piece of that advice flawlessly.
Oh, perfectionism.
Exactly. Which leads us to this wonderful concept of wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi is the Japanese art of finding beauty in imperfection.
Right.
It's this philosophical understanding that flaws are not just inevitable, but sometimes they are the exact elements that make something truly great.
The book talks about this legendary architect named Tadao Ando. He was an untrained ex-boxer, actually, not a classically trained architect at all.
Interesting.
And he designed this tiny, award-winning row house in Japan. But it had a rather massive flaw. There was literally no ceiling in the interior courtyard.
Wait, what?
You literally had to carry an umbrella inside your own house to walk from the bedroom to the kitchen if it was raining.
Let me stop you right there. Building a house where you need an umbrella inside sounds like the work of a terrible architect, not a master.
Well, to a perfectionist, yes, it is a complete failure.
Right.
But Ando sacrificed that functional comfort to perfectly execute his artistic vision. He wanted the house to act as a bunker against the chaotic noise of the city while remaining fundamentally connected to the beauty of nature above.
Oh, I see.
He focused obsessively on the details that mattered to him, like he vibrated the exposed concrete until it was smooth as butter, and he completely let go of the rest. He was a master imperfectionist.
And this actually leads to a data point from the research that completely subverts how we think about the workplace.
Lay on me.
Perfectionism has zero correlation with high performance.
None.
None. The studies consistently show that the best architects, the most innovative sculptors, they're very often the B students.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Perfectionists get hopelessly bogged down obsessing over tiny, irrelevant details. They actively avoid new challenges because they are terrified of failing, and they shame themselves so brutally for minor mistakes that they bypass the learning process entirely.
Which is why the classic advice to just do your best is actually terrible advice for growth.
It's far too ambiguous. If you tell a perfectionist to just do their best, they will endlessly tinker with a project because they never know when best has actually been achieved.
So what do you do instead?
You have to set specific, highly targeted goals.
Ah. The sources offer a great analogy here from a diving coach named Eric Best. He didn't ask his divers for a perfect 10. He knew there was no perfect 10.
Right.
He would say, on this easy, familiar dive, I want you to hit a 6.5. But on this brand new, terrifying dive that you've never attempted, I just want to score above 0.
Above 0, meaning just survive the dive and hit the water safely.
Exactly. It defines exactly what good enough looks like for that specific moment in time.
In product development, they actually call this aiming for a minimum lovable product.
Oh, I like that. Minimum lovable product.
Yeah, Twyla Tharp, the legendary choreographer, utilized this perfectly when she was trying to fix her $8.5 million Billy Joel musical, Movin' Out.
I heard that debuted really badly.
Oh, the debut was a total disaster. The critics completely savaged it. Now, a perfectionist would have panicked, scrapped the entire show, and started over from scratch.
But she didn't do that.
No. She set up a pop-up committee of judges to review the audience complaints. And she looked for something the text calls inter-rater reliability.
Let's pause and define that. Inter-rater reliability. In plain English, does that just mean looking for patterns in the complaints rather than obsessing over a single bad review?
Exactly that. If only one person complained about a specific scene, she ignored it as just a matter of personal taste.
Right.
But if 3 independent people flagged the exact same confusing plot point, well, that indicated a structural flaw she needed to address.
And her fix wasn't some flawless ground-up rewrite.
Not at all. She simply added a short prologue using some recycled choreography she already had in her vault, just to clarify the characters' relationships.
Wow.
It wasn't perfect, but it made the show lovable, and it ended up winning a Tony Award.
That is incredible. You know, it makes me wonder, is perfectionism secretly just a defense mechanism?
What do you mean?
Like, by constantly tinkering and saying it's not ready yet, are we really just protecting ourselves from the vulnerability of actually releasing our work into the real world?
Oh, it is absolutely a shield against judgment.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Right.
But, here is the harsh reality. Even if you master all of these internal skills, even if you embrace the friction of discomfort and become a proactive sponge and trade perfectionism for wabi-sabi, you are still going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
You will inevitably face external obstacles that you simply cannot climb over alone.
And that is exactly where external systems come in. We need scaffolding.
Scaffolding, right. In a construction sense, scaffolding is a temporary support structure that allows a crew to reach heights they couldn't access otherwise.
Sure.
In human potential, psychological scaffolding operates the exact same way. And the most fascinating example in the text involves, of all things, the video game Tetris.
Okay, this study blew my mind. Psychologists conducted a study where they showed people highly traumatic, upsetting video clips.
Right.
Now, normally, that kind of exposure leads to intrusive, involuntary flashbacks over the following week. But if they had the subjects play Tetris within 24 hours of watching the trauma,
they experienced a 50% reduction in flashbacks.
Wait, playing a falling block video game stops PTSD. How is that even mechanically possible?
Because the brain has a limited bandwidth for processing imagery. The visual spatial processing required to rotate and place those Tetris blocks acts as neurological scaffolding.
Fascinating.
It literally occupies the brain's visual centers, which prevents the traumatic imagery from consolidating into a permanent intrusive memory. It's a temporary structure that protects the mind while it processes the emotional shock.
Wow. So the text actually breaks down effective scaffolding into 4 pillars.
Let's go through them.
Number 1, it comes from others. You generally cannot build your own scaffolding when you're deeply stuck. Number 2, it is tailored to the specific obstacle. So Tetris works for visual trauma, but making the subjects play, say, a trivia game wouldn't have worked.
Right. Different kind of processing.
Exactly. Number 3, it comes at a pivotal point in time. You have to play Tetris before the memory consolidates. And number 4, and this is probably the most vital one, it is temporary.
Yes, it is not a permanent crutch. You use it to bypass the immediate block, and then you remove it so the person can stand on their own 2 feet.
Which brings us to the incredible story of Evelyn Glennie.
Oh, this story is amazing.
She was a teenage farm girl in Scotland who had a massive dream of becoming a professional musician. So she applied to the prestigious Royal Academy of Music.
And the expert panel rejected her. They explicitly stated she lacked the fundamental biological ability to ever make it as a professional.
Because Evelyn Glennie was profoundly deaf.
Right.
The Academy looked at her starting point, a deaf girl trying to play percussion, and they just wrote off her potential entirely. But with the right scaffolding, her teachers helped her bypass her ears.
How did they do that?
She learned to feel the resonance of the music through her body. She would take off her shoes and literally feel the vibrations through the wooden floorboards.
Wow.
The neuroplasticity of her brain eventually mapped the physical touch to the sound. And she didn't just become a working musician, she became the world's first full-time solo percussionist.
It illustrates the entire premise perfectly.
No.
I mean, scaffolding doesn't do the work for you. The floorboards didn't play the drums for her.
Right.
They just provided the temporary support she needed to access her own hidden capacity.
It's exactly like training wheels on a bicycle.
Exactly.
They aren't meant to be welded to the bike permanently. They are just an external structure that holds you up long enough for you to internalize your own sense of balance. And once you feel that balance, the wheels come off and you fly.
Beautifully said.
So let's pull all of this together. Human potential is not a fixed trait decided at birth. It is highly dynamic.
Yes.
It is unlocked when we actively seek out the friction of discomfort instead of hiding in our so-called learning styles. It happens when we become proactive sponges filtering advice to adapt.
Right.
It happens when we abandon the defense mechanism of perfectionism and embrace wabi-sabi. And it happens when we utilize temporary scaffolding to get over the walls we just can't scale alone.
So if we bring this all back to you, listening right now, think about the people in your life, your coworkers, your kids, your friends. If true potential is measured not by where you start, but by the distance you travel, who are you currently writing off because of their starting point?
That's a great question.
And more importantly, what kind of temporary scaffolding could you provide for them today to help them uncover the hidden potential they don't even know they have?
Because judging someone's potential by their initial aptitude is exactly like judging that marathon runner by their first 3 steps.
Exactly.
Give them the scaffolding, embrace the discomfort of the run, and watch how far they can go. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.